This fall, we're actually trying something new. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. We're doing mass hiring events. And by mass, I mean in the next few weeks, I'm looking to try to get 80 people hired through just a few of our organizations. And again, I support that 40. So everything we do is on large scale here. But through this process, what we're trying to do is find folks, especially through what we call direct hire opportunities. Usually what goes on in Usajobs is because there's a job opening that's out there. We don't have anybody specifically identified for that job yet. That job doesn't have what's called a direct hire authority because it's not a type of position that Congress has given us ability to kind of skip Usajobs, for lack of a better word. So that's what explains why a lot of things go on in Usajobs. What I do is I try to find, okay, engineer scientists, let's see some other ones. And what are some other ones? Anybody who's dealing with maintenance type of stuff, things like that, business administration. Those types of positions come with direct hire authorities. So if you're going into that position, I can look at you, pull in your resume. Somebody says, yes, we want to hire you. And we just do some paperwork. We never see Usajobs over there. There's other times to where a person might have a target disability. They might be part of, has anybody heard of the NSEP program? National Security Education Program. It's like a scholarship type of thing that a lot of folks in the types of majors you have going here will be. And part of their payback is that they get into a federal job. Because they have a payback to get into a federal job, they can then have a direct hire opportunity to get in there. If you've worked for Peace Corps, you have a direct hire that's tied to you as a person there. And there's some other things, military spouses, veterans, things along those lines where the person, you as a person, carry that direct hire authority. And so that's largely what I'm looking for permanent hires, especially for our mid-level and senior positions. What I also do, what I've been doing for years, is working at those entry-level and mid-level type positions. This is where the workforce planning part of my day comes in. Anybody want to guess? Okay, so a little bit of, I'll do a little placeholder here. 80% of a typical office's workday, all the workload and everything that gets done, about 80% of it is more entry and mid-level work that gets done. You know, taking a number from the spreadsheet, putting it over to this spreadsheet, making a PowerPoint slide, making photocopies, doing whatever. 80% of the day is that work. And 20% is more, intellectual, more management level type of experience type of jobs. Anybody want to guess what percentage of the Department of Defense, our senior staff, our staff in the Pentagon, is how many of those folks are senior? Price is Right rules without going over. 15. Okay, we're definitely gonna go Price is Right higher for a while. Higher. It's higher. 80. It's opposite. 80% of the tasks are junior tasks, junior to mid-level tasks, yet 80% of our workforce are senior workforce, are senior individuals. That's a problem. So we've been working for years to correct that problem. Again, that's part of the bad stuff that we left you out here. So why does that matter to you? You're part of the solution, especially if you're in school, recent or becoming a recent graduate from American or from other schools, technically, things like that. To bring in more of those entry level, to more of those mid-level folks. I just been technically, I haven't really gotten to it yet to the extent I want to and need to, but we have a whole new program setting aside specific billets to start bringing in more folks, even who are more the junior and mid-level types of positions to start better rounding out our workforce. A lot of our organizations are taking one GS-15 position, turning them into two GS-9 positions to better balance us as a workforce. So we've been working on that for years. All that's to say is through this little COVID pause that a lot of folks have been having, we've been still doing a lot of work to make more opportunities for you all directly here. And part of my job is to help guide you through that process. What I was doing a little bit with folks today, largely what I do, I go out, again, I find folks, bring me a resume. Is there a potential match? What can I do to help you with your resume to basically help you be the most competitive person you can? Now, I can't go over there, way off camera. I can cover Darnice's ears and say that she's awesome, so it's not awkward that she's here. But her and Sharada and the folks here have always been awesome to work with. But I'm almost guaranteed they'll tell you page resume. right? How many of you beaten about the head and shoulders, one-page resume, one-page resume? There's a reason for the one-page resume. When you're in private sector, a private sector recruiter will basically spend about seconds, maybe 45 seconds. If it's Saturday morning and they're sipping mimosas on the beach, maybe they'll spend the extra 15 seconds with your resume, looking through it. And that's it. Not to depress you for how much time you might be spending on that one-page resume to get everything jammed in there and every last word of that bullet to be perfect on there. But really, private sector recruiters look for what school did you go to? If you're in a technical field like finance or engineering, they'll look for your GPA. And then where have you worked before? What internship or position have you done before? Basically, it's in bold in your resume. That's why it's largely limited to one page, because that's really what they're looking for. Public sector is different. We, by law, have to look at the skills. Our little technical term is KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities. So all those other bullets that are in a resume, we need to read through them. So we need to see, okay, yeah, sure, you've worked at this place, but did you show the skills that you needed to get in there? And so this is why the federal resume, okay, this is our second round. Those of you who didn't participate are now on the hook. Pay for the second round of Price is Right game. What's the average length of a federal resume? 7. Ooh, we were going high at the high end to go. You're gutsy going out there. It's 5 to 7 pages. Obnoxiously long, some of us might say. But it's obnoxiously long. Why? Because show all those extra skills. And quite honestly, over time, folks that try to game the Usajobs system. Usajobs obviously is that repository of all federal. You go in there, and you know what? I literally talked to a guy. I think it was it this morning or yesterday, and he admitted to doing this. He said he had like a 17-page resume that had every word and phrase that he could think of. And they just had that one resume in Usajobs and would apply to 100 different jobs in hopes that, okay, all you need to be is 1%, right? If you apply to 100 jobs, all you need is 1% success rate. That's the thinking. And then you have your job. The problem with that type of strategy, I call it the trawling strategy, leads to a 0% success rate. And I'll go into that in a little bit why, because what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the Usajobs experience, how to help you survive that a little bit. But in doing that, that will also prep you to get stronger packages and stronger applications and stronger resumes, quite honestly, if you want to reach out to me and email me your resume at the end of the day. That works? Any questions so far? So far, there hasn't been really any questions. No? Okay, so it's gonna be that time. Should have had a warm-up comic up here or something. Get the crowd more lively. Yeah. Okay, I will have that specific fluffing strategy in just a second. But yeah, it's good. Yeah, I will help you fluff away. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, now we're going to start. That was a tough question to start from, to give an answer, because this is going to be the hard question. Because when I first got into this position some years back, we had one of our organizations specifically wanted to hire Korean citizens. It was our POWMIA accounting agency, which goes out, tries to find folks who went missing in past wars. Obviously, the Korean War being one of those past wars. And they had folks on the ground they wanted to hire permanently with their agency. But the problem was we could not get security clearances. So if you're not a U.S. citizen, or at least a dual citizen, we're basically prohibited from being able to. So there's other ways, large contracting firms that you can be working with around locally, as long as they didn't have to have a security clearance. It's really a security clearance aspect. And I say it's tough because I'm not just playing this because you're sitting there asking me, but it's tough because I literally had a Japanese gent that I was working with a few days ago. He sent me a resume, and it's one of those resumes that just shine, birds are chirping, It's like, oh my God, I got to get this guy hired for my comptroller office because he had plenty of experience going back to get his master's. He would have been a no-brainer, but he was a Japanese citizen, which killed me then. And as I told him, it killed me because I could not. I'm precluded from getting there. He's not the only one where I've had that challenge or that frustration, I guess. Yeah. Yes, in one case for our Intel side. Anybody ever applied or heard of anybody applied to a, yeah, because I'll be on tape. I'll say this. Anybody heard of anybody applying to Army or Navy staffs? And they say, you're awesome. We want to hire you, but we'll see you in a year when your security clearance is done. Have you heard those horror stories? Yeah. Anybody else think that's kind of silly? That's kind of silly. So we did some analysis and figured out that it's rare that somebody passes our interim clearance and then ultimately fails, without some kind of flag is saying, oh, we may have some issues here. Somebody who passes the interim clearance and then ultimately fails the full clearance at the end. A large difference between an interim clearance and a full clearance is they go back to talk to your kindergarten teacher. Did little Joey, get off his mat and tell secrets to the person in the next mat during nap time, type things, or whatever they're asking, folks. That's a large difference. So what we decided, technically the head of our HR decided, was we go with interim clearances. So it takes us a while to get through the paperwork because again, we're federal government. We love our paper here. So while we're going through all the paperwork and stuff like that to bring you on, and get your fingerprinted and all that type of stuff, we're running that clearance, and usually we can get an interim clearance. Depends on your background, obviously. If you're 18 years old, you lived in one house your whole life, and this is now you're coming to college and you're trying to get a security clearance, a couple days, 3 days, maybe. If you're a Colombian drug lord, it may take a little bit longer to go through your background and then ultimately hopefully reject you. Your security clearance there, but it doesn't take as long because the top secret clearance can take what has been taking. I've been hearing anywhere from 12 to 15 months. Historically, they've been trying to get that number down. Secret clearances can take about 6 months to go to a full clearance. So what we do is we do the interim, hire you with the caveat that if you do wind up failing, then okay, we're done at that time. But I can't think of a time that that's actually happened. It may happen for other staffs, but I haven't seen that type of thing. So the security clearances are pretty easy for us because we just try to take the common sense approach to it because we're trying to shorten our hiring process. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. I probably shouldn't admit this on tape, but if I'm doing the security clearance, and okay, technically a foreign contact is a parent of another kid who's playing soccer with my kid on the soccer field. And like, okay, do I list him? There are great families I've met as a soccer dad. Am I listing all of them? Yeah, probably not. But I mentioned that, okay, yeah, we went to Greece on vacation. We just did our typical, week-long guided tour, blah, 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 things like that. If you've lived overseas or had a semester overseas, that's what can slow things down a little bit more than, again, that proverbial 18-year-old who's, this is the first time they've ever been away from home. They've lived in one place because you have to go through and try to find people that have lived in different locations. So when you get to be an old guy like me, who's especially traveled in the military, it takes a long time to remember. What year was I in Washington State again? I've never seen it hindering per se. The only hindrance is it just takes a little bit longer because they have to track down and somebody has to call that person. Did you sneak off your mat in that country to go tell secrets to somebody or things along those lines? So realize today, people are getting around a lot more. And especially our foreign policy folks, our OSD policy folks like to have folks who have done a semester abroad. So it's kind of hard to prefer somebody having a semester abroad and then preclude somebody who made some contacts while they were abroad there. So it just slows things down a little bit, but it's just tracking down folks. Did you have a question, or somebody else had a question over here too? Before okay, anybody here going for sports management? Okay. Believe it or not, I met one young lady who wanted a career in sports management. I said, well, congratulations, you're the only person I've ever found who I don't recruit for because I do so many organizations. Anybody know what the difference between the odontologist and the odontologist is? One studies ancient teeth and the other studies butterflies, apparently. I had to learn this because one of my organizations, the POWMIA accounting, needed people to be able to examine teeth of remains. We do engineering, business, well, business and finance overall, personnel policy, foreign policy, intel, archaeology, anthropology, just about every major I've ever met. We have. And if you're, okay, so nobody here is probably history or English major. Those folks usually tend towards our personnel and readiness areas that are just looking for smart people who write well, can organize thoughts, type of things. So no matter what major you are, if you're a smart person, you're able to organize thoughts. There's different positions in our various organizations for them. Some are more targeted, obviously, if you went, you're electrical engineer undergrad, now you're getting your PA or whatever. Maybe tiered more or geared more towards certain organizations than others. But we figure that out. That's part of where I step in because I look at your resume. A lot of times what happens, I'll get to a little bit of the process here. When you send me your resume, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll either give you the, okay, got it. At least I'll always try to get back to you to say, I got it. We sometimes have email issues. So if you emailed me a resume and I haven't gotten back to you, say, James, did that email get lost? Because sometimes whatever happens with our servers, some emails get lost. But I always try to at least acknowledge. Sometimes I'll go to that extra level of, hey, it looks like, you're looking at OSD policy. However, something in your background, some kind of experience brings to an office that you probably don't even know exist. How many people have ever heard of the Defense Technology Security Administration or agency? I just call them DTSA. I don't even know what the A stands for anymore. See, there's organizations that we support that you have no idea even exist. They're folks that basically run the export controls for technology. Try to get the good technology to our friends, try to keep the good technology away from our bad guys. That's what they do. But if you're in foreign, they have a foreign affairs aspect where they're working with our foreign partners on getting that technology transferred over. And then of course they have an engineering side there. So you may be thinking, well, I want to go for the undersecretary for research and engineering because I'm an engineer. And I'll say, well, you happen to have done an internship that dealt with export controls during your State Department, internship way back when. We have an office that does that. So sometimes I'll suggest, hey, here's a link. Take a look at this organization to see if they're of interest to you. Try to make those connections across. Any more opening questions before we start ripping into Usajobs? Yeah. Oh, no. No. Well, oh, yeah. Sorry. I promised I was going to do that. How many questions have I gone by? Have you been typing in the questions? Okay. Sorry. The question was, why is security clearance process so scary? Did I incorporate that? Because it's painful. The SF-86, which is the initial document that you're probably, lamenting, is painful because you're having to go through. Luckily for you all, it's now electronic. When I was first doing it, it was, oh my God, paper. So it was really thick and you're trying to remember all this stuff. Lucky I was young, so I didn't have too much to put in when I was doing it back in the 80s type of things. But it takes a long time to go through because it's taking you through step by step. Okay, now what foreign folks have what countries have you ever visited? What people have you ever done? And well, they also ask fun. To me, it could be scary just because of the sheer length of how long the SF-86 is to fill out, even online. But it's still filled with fun questions like, are you a terrorist? Like, why, yes, I'm a terrorist. It's like, this is a trick question. Somebody's going to accidentally admit, I didn't mean to admit that I was a foreign spy type of thing. So they ask a lot of those questions. So for me, I chuckle, but I do realize it's a little bit painful because we're It's painful for us too, because we try to get people, it's like, okay, we're trying to get you hired. We sent you a tentative job offer to get to that final job offer. We'd like you to get this SF-86 done. And it takes people a while to try to remember. It's like, okay, what was my address in, 19 whatever or 2000 whatever, that type of stuff. So that's really the only hard part. Okay. Question is, what can get you rejected? It's certain foreign entanglements type of thing. If you are a Colombian drug lord, I would hope we'd find a way to figure that out and reject. Overall, there's a lot of, because I just happen to have similar questions along this line, because I was talking with a young lady who was all nervous because I was trying to get a month and year date, because technically in a resume, when we start getting to the final stage, we want to have that year. I'll talk about why, start and end for different things. And she was stressing about that. She's like, well, James, what if it was May and I put April? I'm stressing because I don't want to get busted for whatever. And so she was like, I'm gonna call up the state of New York, because I hear they have the records on when I was there and blah, 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 all this stuff. Just relax. We're federal governments. We're not smart enough, I think, to figure out if it was April versus May when somebody started the type of jobs. But we're trying to get that best guess of what's going on here. So when I talk about how many hours worked per week, if you worked 16 hours per week and it was really 14 hours per week, are we going to be able to figure that out? Probably not. Now, if you started putting, I worked at this job for 50 hours and this same job at the same time for 40 hours, then we're little head scratchers type of things. Like, are we indulging or your resume, trying to inflate things a little bit here? But the folks who do this, the security clearances, some HR, it's an art, but we do this enough where we can kind of just look at something and realize, okay, this may be something wrong or whatever, but you forgot you went to a country, or if you got the month you went to a country, somebody's going to do that background investigation, see when your passport was scanned to the country. And it's like, oh, they said April, but it was actually May. We're like, okay, people can forget little things here and there. I barely can remember my last address myself. So if I were to try to do the previous addresses, I'd be hosed for my renewal type things. So it's all these type of things. You want to be truthful, obviously the best of your ability, but you don't want to stress out if it's, little minutia here, little minutia there. If that makes any sense? Okay. So speaking of minutia, let's start the fun USA ripping process here. So I'm going to go through the full process as if you were doing the USA Jobs aspect, because there's a major section in there about the development of your resume and how to make it successful. That will not only help you with USA Jobs, it will also help you with applying directly through me. Okay. So how many of you are USA Job survivors? Anybody? Okay. We're going to have counseling for everybody right after this, for who's done USA Jobs. USA Jobs is painful to do searches because it takes a long time to even find jobs you're interested in, right? How many of you know that about 70 to 80% of the positions that are budget related positions are actually listed as program manager or management analyst in USA Jobs? If you're an MBA or a business student and you're trying to find business jobs, you don't know that they actually masquerade as 0300 or 0301 or 0343 management analysts. So it takes a long time to even USA Jobs to even find jobs you're interested in applying for. Then, because I asked you to, I recommended, please tailor your resume to every position there. And I'll show you how to do that. That takes a long time to do, right? So how are you going to tailor your resume? There's a few tricks of the trade here. Overall, there's a technique that I tell folks, I call it the copy paste tweak technique. Now I'll do all my, officially recorded, I'll do my little HR caveats. This technique is not a guarantee of success. It's not a requirement, but I've seen it work. I've seen people, it's always fun because here I think you all say, one-page resume so much that folks just give me that one-page resume. And when I say, it's like, okay, look, here's a way to approach your resume here. And it's like when they send me back a revised resume, it's literally like I'm looking at somebody different, a completely different person. I know it's the same person that sent me the one-page resume versus a 3 or 4-page resume, but it's like I'm looking at a completely different person here. So there's a few techniques. This copy, paste, and tweak technique. The first place you can get, so you copy and paste keywords and phrases into your resume. That becomes skill X. You add context Y. So I did skill X, context Y with result Z. I'll get to the why you do the result Z part, but that context Y actually helps you figure out, okay, if I had the same skill that I did in 3 different internships or in an academic experience, plus a couple internships or 1 internship or whatever, multiple times, you can take that same skill and put it in your resume multiple times, just with different context. Now, what does this do? If I look at your resume and I see you did this activity once and you succeeded, okay, great. Did you get lucky? I don't know. If you did that same skill 3 times and succeeded in 3 different places, odds are you didn't get lucky. Odds are you're pretty good. And past being prologue, you'll be able to do that skill for me. Okay, so that's about giving that ultimate decider, that hiring manager or supervisor, that warm fuzzy that, okay, yeah, this person's done this multiple times, so they should be able to do it for me easily. There. Now, where do you get these things to copy and paste? There's a few places. The first is obviously, well, if you have to go through Usajobs, which is good to cover your bases, to go multiple options, try Usajobs, get some mimosas, have fun with it, things like that as you're going through. But as you're going through, announcement should have a decently worded job announcement, should have some bullets. Here's the type of duties they do. Here's the type of skills they're expecting. That some HR person made up those words in there. So copy and paste those words so that HR person can recognize, oh, you're basically regurgitating back. I'm sure this is a technique that's being taught here. Basic 101 for anything is regurgitate the words back from the announcement. So that's the easiest place to do. Another source, and I don't have a overhead because I never want overhead type of stuff. But if you Google, DuckDuckGo, MSN, whatever your search engine is, there, if you look at the words OPM classification guide, now it's going to take you to one of the top results should be an OPM site. Like a good federal website, it has way too many links all over it. But towards the top in the kind of the paragraph section, you're going to see where it says position classification standards. Click on that link. When you click on that link, it's going to take you to a website. And I'm walking you through this way because every now and then OPM moves where they put their address there. So if I teach you how to find the address, then obviously this won't go out of style a week from now. Things. But if you go there, those position classification standards, what you're going to get to is a website that just has a long laundry list of occupations. By law, people had to get together from multiple agencies and define, okay, this is what a mechanical engineer does versus an aeronautical engineer versus a nautical engineer versus a general engineer, what a budget analyst does versus a budget auditor versus a financial management analyst versus an accountant does. All these different types of occupations are written in PDF documents. Now, the benefits of these PDF documents is that they come up with a lot of bullets in there. There's a couple places to look in general. One is the definition. How are they defining a mechanical engineer? Because usually they don't define what a mechanical engineer is. They usually define what a mechanical engineer does in general. So that gives you a few bullets. Oh, this is what a mechanical engineer does. And so copy and paste that over. I won't bore you with all the HR weenie type of stuff that goes on for why there's this whole section called factors in there. But if you look at factors 1, 4, and 5, 1 is knowledge, and 4 and 5, 1 is complexity, the other scope and effect. I get mixed up which one is which. But those are also good places that you can find bullets just that describe, hey, here's the type of skills that a mechanical engineer would do versus a foreign affairs analyst would do versus whatever an anthropologist or an archaeologist would do. Okay, copy and paste all that into your resume. Don't worry about length, because again, resumes can get obnoxiously long. And then just start filling in skill X, context Y, in there. So that's another place that you can get for fodder. What does the OPM document do? And the same with the job announcement. It does. It gives you a way to translate what you know about yourself into government speak. There's reason for this. You can have some engineer that's as old as I am that they're looking for a data management analyst, and he's like, you took you a while, but you found this data management analyst position. And you're like, oh, great. I'm a Python expert. So you put in your resume, Python expert. Now some engineer thinks you're snake charmer or something like that. They don't know what Python even is, or maybe they've heard about Python, but they have no idea what Python programming language is. And R, who names something R type of things. So what it does is it kind of helps you translate what you know about yourself into words that a hiring manager would know about or an HR person would know about. The HR person, what the HR person would know about is a key thing to survive Usajobs. Because what happens on the backside after you've applied, and we'll talk about where some people, about half the people fail in Usajobs there. If an HR person even opens your resume after you've applied, the HR person is not a scientist, not an engineer, not a financial management person. Again, they're scared of Pythons themselves. So what are they going to do? Literally on one screen, they're going to have the duties, either from that OPM document or from the actual announcement in Usajobs. On one screen, they'll have your resume on the other screen. If they can't quickly and easily look across, oh yeah, this person has skill X, Y, and Z. Guess what email you get? Not qualified, sorry. So if you're translating those words that even an HR person can understand, let alone ultimately a supervisor or a manager or area manager can understand, it makes it easier for them. It spoon feeds it for them. Any questions on that part? Probably belabor that part. Yeah. The question is, try to get better. See, I can learn. I'm not too old to learn. So where's the OPM directory? Again, Google OPM classification guide. Should be one of the top searches, search results. Click there. There's going to be 50 million results, 50 million links on there. You should have a thing that says position classification guides. Click that, and that's where that laundry list of PDFs is going to be. Another thing that this technique does for you, especially going to the OPM site, is it's going to help you remember some of those skills that, quite honestly, you don't think of skills anymore. For our global, okay, is it global affairs, international affairs? Yeah, international affairs. Sorry, I don't mean to mean AU, but everybody calls it something different. I wish we could just come up with an international standard for what we call international affairs. If I could do one thing before I retire out of government, that'd be the one thing I'd accomplish. An economist is economist, whatever you do. International affairs goes by like 50 million different things here. But believe it or not, to be qualified, to be certified as a foreign affairs analyst, you have to, now you're sitting down here, this is good. You have to be able to read multiple sources of information and fuse it into one picture and make a recommendation. Has anybody not been able to do that since like third grade, second grade, maybe? If you went to like a private school, advanced private school, probably by first grade, you were doing PowerPoint presentations on this type of stuff. But that's actual skill that you would want to show in your resume. So there's tons of skills that you can have in your resume. And that one-page resume that you're doing for the private sector, they're not really looking for the skills anyway. But by the time you get done with all your fancy smancy formatting, what are you really able to show on one page? Maybe a couple skills. By the time you do all your headers and all your fancy formatting and all that stuff, really a couple skills. Now you're getting into a federal resume that has 3 or 4 pages, or 2 or 3 or 4 pages. Now what are you able to show? 12 skills, 20 skills. And if I'm a hiring manager, if I'm the supervisor making an ultimate decision, I have one person that's showing me 2 skills, one person that's showing me 12 skills. Who am I going to choose? Ceteris paribus. More skills. So that's how federal jobs or federal resumes get longer, because you're wanting to show as many skills as you can to somebody, because that somebody wants that warm fuzzy that, okay, yeah, this person has a record of accomplishment and has 12 different skills. So I can just hand this person this program and they can just run with it. Okay. The third source of information, and here's where I'll shamelessly plug my own website, I guess, But I made this website for folks like you all. It's whs.mil. WHS stands for Washington Headquarters Services, .mil, obviously short for military, /careers. On that website, what I do is I provide some short descriptions of the remember those direct hiring authorities that I mentioned earlier. I kind of have some short descriptions of it so you can kind of know, hey, I'm a student or I'm a recent graduate. Boom. There's direct hire authority tied to you as a person. That one's pretty easy for most everybody in here. But you can have other direct hire authorities for if you're going into business, finance, things along those lines. There's another section that has some tips on how to make a resume. I threw a little bit in there. But there's also a section I think it's called current openings. If you clicked it, because I'm a federal website, I have tons more links than I should have. But at least it is collapsed. So once you click it, it will then expand and show a bunch of jobs that I'm looking to hire right now. Okay. Now there's technically about 600 jobs I would love to be filling right now. But the ones I have on my website are the ones that have a lot of. For example, there's 2 in there that are labeled FMD. One is 0501 financial management analyst, and another is a 0560 budget analyst for a financial management directorate. Anybody want to guess how many people I'm looking to hire for one office in the next couple of weeks? How many openings they have right now? Higher. Okay, 50 was a little high. We got the little 38 positions. We do things on the scale of Department of Defense. That's partly an internal problem. I'll put us on record. I have some HR folks down the hall that were told to focus on other organizations through the summer. They did that, but they left some other organizations hanging. So the natural turnover has caught up to some organizations. And they let me know last Friday that, James, by the way, was it 38 or 39? I can't remember. Okay. I emailed Darnice and was like, we have this many positions. Get these, anybody over at the business school, let them know, apply now, that type of things there. So, but it has all these types of positions that I'm hiring en masse here. So it's not all my positions. However, if you're looking at Intel, I think I have an Intel up there. There's a foreign policy one for our DTSA organization. I don't think nobody's here is interested in working on HVAC machines, right? Nobody wants, you're getting college degrees, you don't want to work on HVAC anymore? Okay. You have to ask every now and then. Maybe there's somebody who secretly wanted to work HVAC machines for their whole life. Anyway, so there's plenty of those type of things on there. So you might see some of those. And what makes those more unique is I've worked with the people in those organizations, and I told them, I'll handle the geeky, the little nerdy HR language. I want to know from you, no lie, what are you looking for? I can handle the whole minimum qualifications thing, but when you're looking at 2 people who are minimally qualified, technically, they certify as being minimally qualified, what are you really looking for? So those documents I have on my website lay out those items. Are what it's listed as A&S is a little bit of a misnomer, because that one advertisement I have in there, I think I call it a 0343 A&S open con, I think it's labeled as. That's actually 24 positions I have for one of those documents, because it has multiple positions I put in one document because it's for one organization and we're doing a mass hiring event for them. Belabor this because that's another source of things that you can pull in information and bullets to be able to copy and paste over into your resumes. So now I really over explained. Was it recruit explained, recruit explained, recruiter explained the thing, but it's so important because so many folks, especially in federal resumes, because you all are taught 1-page resume, told 1-page resume. And you put in that 1-page resume, and that kind of makes it easy for your typical HR person to say, oh, yeah, not enough here to qualify. Don't see enough skills here. So that's why I belabor it. There's certain things that really kill a lot of folks when they go into Usajobs. And it also helps us. Again, it's like I'm looking at 2 different people. So when I when I get that, especially when it's geared towards a specific event, a specific office, then I can get with my contact that I've worked with and say, I become your advocate, basically, at one point, where I say, hey, I think this person's of interest. I don't do that for everybody. Got to be honest. Now, nobody here is majoring in 17th century French poetry. So if I tell a joke, it's not going to offend anybody here. Okay. Don't apply for an electrical engineering job if you're a 17th century French poetry major. There's common sense. So I'll filter out some of those type of things. I'll make sure there's enough of a match to the jobs. There's some things I just can't, even I can't do anything about. But I'll try wherever I can, where I find that match as best I can to say, I become your advocate and say, here's why you're looking for skill X, Y, and Z. Here's where I think this person meets X, Y, Z. And oh, by the way, here's something remarkable that stood out to me, should stand out to you. And I'm working with my organizations on that for us to do more direct hiring. Some of my organizations scare me, to be honest, because then they'll hire somebody up based off of my recommendation. They won't even interview. I'm like, don't you even want to talk to them? I think they'd like to talk to you before they accept a job. But it's tended to work. Doesn't work for all the organizations. Most of them do good and they actually want to interview you. Things like that. But on occasion, my recommendation just carries the day. Things like that. But that's because I become your salesman, basically. There. Okay, so any questions so far? I'm soliciting questions that I can not repeat for everybody online. Are there any questions coming over on the online side? Okay. Maybe they're cooking their ramen noodles at this point, and everything like that. Okay. So all this, all that I've described so far is to get to one aspect. Recruiting really gets down to, well, hiring, I guess, whoever's making the decision. Initially a recruiter who's kind of doing some screening and trying to do some matching, a hiring manager, or ultimately the supervisor. It's like, I'm hiring you from my office. I want to have a say in who's getting hired. It really comes down to two things. Basic propensity. Everything I've been talking to so far is the basic propensity. Basic propensity. You don't have to have been doing the job for 20 years. Okay. If any of you are 22 years old and you've been doing the job for 20 years, I want you to report to me because that's child labor law violations right there. Okay. But at this point in your career, are you pretty good? Do you have that basic propensity? Especially, this is really key for anybody in the financial management, because I'm a Chicago MBA. You know, I should do the rah-rah #1 in the world MBA program. But private sector business is far different than government. How government does business. Our programming and budgeting process is very different. So you have to get taught how to do it and how to survive through the federal government process there. So if you have that basic propensity, then people say, okay, yeah, we can teach the person how to do the exact job and trust that we'll be able to hand over those programs to them. The other aspect is the work hard. Basic propensity and ability to work hard. Now you're thinking, James, how do I show on a piece of paper that I can work hard? Huh? I'm glad you asked. Can I pretend for everybody online that somebody actually asked that? Yes, everybody online, somebody actually asked that, and I'm repeating that question. Glad you asked. There's multiple ways. Remember that part Z that I mentioned? There's a big difference. And I had a couple of folks I was talking with today. One young lady, exceptional resume. I mean, I actually told her that you spent a lot of time putting together this resume, because it was one physically prepared, one of the best resumes I'd ever seen. Just how it was put together and shaped. There was just one problem. What she did was she described a lot of what I call little D dids. She answered phones. She put together slides or presentations. She put together papers. She analyzed whatever. Those are the little D dids that make up your day. Okay. To show a big D did is what was the result of all that work. Great. You showed the skills. Yes, you can do written and oral communication. Great. That bullet shows that you can do written and oral communication. What was the result in that particular case? What was the result in the 30 different bullets cases here? If somebody starts looking at a bunch of results, this is a person that can get things done. Look at all these results, just bullet after bullet after bullet after bullet results. What is that going to do? That's going to give somebody a warm fuzzy that, past the prologue, maybe they're going to get me some results. Okay. This should be a big thing in any organization. That'll be my soapbox moment here. Aside from getting international affairs to agree on one term here, everybody should care about getting things done. In the Department of Defense, it defines our culture. Okay. Because I'll tell you point blank, hopefully this is something we do for you and you don't think of it as us doing it to you. Okay, but if you come work for Department of Defense, even as an intern, a fellow, a senior person, whatever it is, we're going to hand you programs and portfolios or whatever, and just trust that you're going to go make it happen. You don't believe me? I was long ago, when I was a young ensign getting my Chicago MBA, I thought, well, going to the beach and Cubs games and golfing every day would be too much fun for the summertime. So I'm going to go back to DC as a naval officer and work 12-hour days in the Pentagon, because that's what military officers typically do in the Pentagon, because that was going to be much more fun. All my office knew, because it was a commander who hired me into this other office. He worked in one office and hired me brought me in for another office, just basically for a summer internship to give me some experience here. All they knew was that I was a Navy ensign and that I was a Chicago MBA. That's all they knew about me. Maybe some of them knew my name, maybe, but that's really all they knew about me. I show up day one, they handed me over $800 million worth of programs, said, here you go, James, here's your programs, go run them. That's what we'll do for you. Hopefully you'll think of it as for you. We had a Mccain fellow. Mccain Fellowships is a program for folks coming out of grad school that we use as a kind of a way to get you a foothold in to our programs, into an office, get you working there for a year. And then they, again, that eHarmony moment, they love you, you love them. Let's make this permanent, put a ring on it, type of things there. But we had a Mccain fellow. I'm pretty sure I think I remember today, I think he was an American student, came out 2 weeks in. He's 2 weeks out of graduating from here. And he emails us back, and we all had a little chuckle because that's just how excited he was. He's like, James, I just briefed an assistant secretary of defense on the Department of Defense's policy towards country X. This is a 24-year-old guy, 2 weeks out of grad school, helping set the policy for the Department of Defense on country X of things. So when we say we're about getting things done, that's why we're looking for getting things done, especially in our department, because we just want to be able to hand you those programs, hand you that portfolio, and with those multiple skills, and just trust that, okay, yeah, we're going to answer a few questions. What is this programming, planning, budgeting, execution cycle thing all about? And things like that. And the Pentagon's a big place. Okay, how do you not get lost? We'll answer some basic questions, but we want to be able to trust that we can just hand these things to you and let you run with it. Yeah. Okay, I can't repeat that question. That was a very good question. So I'm sorry, I got to hand it back.
Do I say the same? Okay. Is there value to the statement of grad school now being basically required to get employed?
That's a good question. You want me to be honest? For my type of positions, because of their seniority, it's a whole lot easier to come directly into those entry and mid-level as out of grad school, because we have this Mccain Fellows program. Has anybody here heard of the Presidential Management Fellows program? Everybody's like, yeah, I'm applying. Don't apply. Okay, how many of you have heard of the program are actually veterans? That's a hitch with the PMF program. PMF has something that's called, and this applies to a lot of different programs, it has veterans preference. You could have gotten your second Nobel Peace Prize by the time you're 13 years old. But if you have a veteran that got straight C's in underwater weaving, as long as that veteran is minimally qualified, that veteran's going to get preference over the Nobel Peace Prize winner. I have kid or whatever, and I can kid against myself because I'm 24-year veteran myself. So it's nothing against veterans. That's just how they set it up, because veterans have enough difficulties getting with their backgrounds that it was set up to help even the playing field there. So what we did to even the playing field on these graduate students coming out was, well, not we, technically Congress did, the SASC did. I think they were taking the lead, was the John, see if I can remember at this point, the official name for it, the John S. McCain Strategic Fellowship Program, something like that. We just call it the McCain program that brings out grad students. And it was designed, we technically have 60 billets for folks every year. We haven't used all 60 yet. We're hopefully this year, this cycle, we're going to get close to that here. But we bring folks in, and this is our entryway. because I think I've mentioned that our workforce is so senior, we're lacking some of these junior and mid-level things. So we use that program because it's by law that we can use that program to help bridge folks, keep them around and build them into the more senior positions, at least the mid-level that they can then take off there. So that being said, given a program that's as strong as our Mccain, that's as easy as our Mccain, it is easier. I'll have to be honest. However, there are other offices that I use with my workforce planning hat on to try to help bridge the undergrads into those type of positions as well. For example, if you're in business, okay, I'm going to try to set you up with one of these FMD billets. Why? Because that particular office does hire more because they're more advanced. They've been taking a lot of GS-15s, turn them into GS-7s and 9s, multiple GS-7s and 9s for a long time, 4 or 5 years now. So they have a better balanced workforce. So there's more of those entry and mid-level that can get folks into. And then you either grow within FMD, or once you get to a certain GS level, you make a jump over to our Undersecretary of Defense for Comptroller or one of the Secretariat staffs, that type of things. There's another organization, ESD, that, okay, here's a generally good person. You can write well, you're well organized. You're probably not going to be senior enough to get into our Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, but they have more mid-level and junior and entry level type of positions in our ESD office. So we can start you there, grow you in the organization, and then you grow into other positions over time. So that was a really long answer to say it's not a requirement, but it's easier. And we're just seeing more folks. It's become more of a thing that there was a time when I was a kid that, hey, if you went to college, you got a college degree. Ooh, that's pretty big time. Now that same type of aura really comes over people who are masters, because so many more people are going to college now. What helps is going to a good school. Again, I'll put my hands over Darnice's. Going to a good school like American will help you as well. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I'm not just saying, well, because you're going to Georgetown. When I'm speaking of Georgetown, it is generally going to a good school because people recognize this, especially with the foreign policy areas, the international security, international affairs, whatever it's called. We know it's a good program. So folks are more willing to take those chances. We also have centralized billets that I keep that I use for internships, try to grow you along. Young lady, the one I told you I sprung it on her. I'm trying to hire basically GS 14s and 15s for this one office, but she was doing the same type of work, had the same type of interests. So I thought, you know what? I have a centralized billet that I own. What if I put her on a paid internship? She's coming out of undergrad. She's working towards her graduate degree, but I kind of laid out a path for what if I did this and what if I did that? What if I did that? And then grow you into Mccain, and then you're off and running. Type things. So that's kind of what I do for the workforce planning side, to try to find good folks and figure out how we can better balance our workforce. There. Sorry. Yeah, there are. So it just becomes getting your resumes to me. Before I run completely out of time, I'll give you all my address, or they'll have my email address as well, but I'll give you the address. Since we only have 5 minutes left, let me do a couple last bashings of Usajobs, because these are critical aspects. Literally half the people will filter yourself out of a job, not even know it. Your resume won't even be seen by an HR person, and you will have no idea why. But you will have no idea that they didn't even look at it. You'll just get that little annoying USA staffing email that says not qualified. That things. First thing is month and year, beginning and end, and the average hours worked per week. Okay. When I first looked at that requirement, I'm like, average hours worked per week. Now, granted, I was a military officer at the time, so I think my first federal resume I ever did, I put like 70 hours. I was just going to be obnoxious, like, well, you asked me how many hours I'm working a week. I'm in the Pentagon as an officer there. There's a reason for it. In short, it basically has to qualify. If I certify you as a GS 11, I need an HR person and my staff, when we're doing it, needs to have been able to certify that, yes, We did a stopwatch and you have 1 year experience at a GS9 at the one level below. That's why that exists. If you don't have those hours worked per week, we can't legally do anything. Now my staff and I can do it because I can email you and say, hey, can you put in your hours worked per week? Type things. But if you're going through USA Jobs, what you just told that HR person who's then seen your resume at the other end is toss it. You can save your time. They can be loving, they can be caring, they can be a dirtbag, doesn't matter. They will toss it because they cannot legally do anything about it because they cannot assume, even if you have the month and year beginning and end, they cannot assume you did a 40-hour work week. And if you worked a year at some place, but you only worked 20 hours per week, that only counts as 6 months. It's just a stopwatch thing. That's why that requirement exists. Please, 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 about 20 to 30%. And I've had to do this myself once. Luckily, I only had to personally do it once, but had to toss people out of consideration because they didn't have the hours worked per week. It was a mass hiring thing I was doing some years ago there. The other thing that happens, how many of you, when you've done USA Jobs, you've taken forever to even find a job, you've tailored your resume, you tried to upload your resume, but the system locked on you 3 times, you had to restart it. You're kind of bored and frustrated, you're on your 3rd mimosa, and all of a sudden, the system starts asking you all these obnoxious questions. I consider myself an expert, or I have no experience. All those things. You ever see those? Don't be me on there. When I first started looking at those things, I started thinking, well, the second word and the 3rd line, I'm not exactly 100% an expert at that word. So I'll give myself basically the next level down on there. I'm not an expert, but I'm I can do this without supervision type of thing. What did I just do? If I do that enough, I score myself out of consideration. What happens on the backside, what you all see as USA Jobs, HR people see as what's a system called USA Staffing. And the computer will take all those answers and turn them into a score. If you don't get a certain score or higher, or if you're not in the top so many of the scores, you won't even get seen. They will not even open up your resume because they legally can't do anything anyway. There. So all that's to say is when you get to those annoying questions, take your time with them. Sober up, whatever you need to do, but take your time with those questions. There. Don't get hung up around the words. Why? Because an HR person wrote it and HR people can't really write well. Okay. Don't get hung up too much on things. What are they trying to ask me here? Am I an expert? No, I haven't done this for 20 years, but I've had 3 classes on it, aced them, and I've done this skill in 2 internships. I'm pretty darn good at it. So don't undersell yourself. Obviously, don't oversell yourself. Don't lie, because if it doesn't show up in the resume in some way, then they won't certify you and they'll toss you out there. But pay attention to those, because that about another 20 to 30% of the people get what's called an IN code on USA Staffing. And as soon as an HR person sees IN, they're like, yeah, can't do anything with that one. Won't even open it. They'll at least open the one that has the lack of 40 hours. Then they'll see it. You don't have the 40 hours or whatever hours work per week. Then they'll toss it. They won't even open the one if you scored yourself too low on that thing. Okay. Last thing, because we'll have additional questions for anyone online and anyone. Okay, I'm going to try to do this slowly, and I'm going to try to remember it all, because my email address is obnoxiously long. Here it's james.w.dillon, Dillon, the number 6, .civ, short for civilian, CIV, at mail.mil. Did you get all those dots? So it's james.w.dillon6.civ at mail.mil. Okay, that's James. I guess you're on a commercial. You're supposed to say it 3 times to make people recognize. Should I do it as a jingle? I'm not going to sing it. I don't have a voice left. It's james.w.dillon6.civ, CIV, at mail.mil. Just the number 6. Yeah. Apparently there's 5 other of me. I checked into it. I thought maybe that's some of my old OSD emails, but apparently there's 5 other James W. Dillons in the world, in the Department of Defense, let alone in the world. Okay. Thanks for taking time. Hopefully I'm not keeping you from some good ramen noodles or whatever good munchies are coming for dinner tonight. But if you have other questions, or particularly if you have resumes, we start the conversation around the resumes. Start trying to figure out where some of those potential matches might come down the line. And thanks.